Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod. We've got Tim Warren with us. He is a co-founder, a CEO of Ambit, cool company. Going to talk about AI. He's also a keynote speaker, angel investors, pretty much everything I want for this podcast. And yeah, we're going to have a cool convo. He's live from Auckland, New Zealand, and wants to travel to Mexico. So Tim will hit me up here. We'll get bikes, BMWs preferably. Shout out to BMW Bike and ride through Mexico. That's an amazing project, Tim. I want to accompany you on that. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and Ambit, Tim?
Yeah, I I was really fortunate. I grew up in a supportive family, and I went through the various schools. Went to Auckland University and studied computer science. And through doing that, I was very fortunate to work with a friend right at the beginning of the call it the when the internet really took off. And so I had an amazing run through there, working with a company. The product was called Wingate. And towards the end of that, I kind of wondered, hey, I was first employee into this business. Um, where's my supercar? So I worked out the people that had these amazing cars and the super yachts, they had this magical thing called equity, and I hadn't heard of equity. So I thought I'll read a book about it. So I got a book, and then I got a few more books. I might have got 20 or 30 books. I read a lot. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll do a bit more study. So I went and studied business and commerce and finance. And at the end of that, well, actually partway through that, I thought, well, I could probably accelerate this journey by learning more in the work environment. And so I went and got a job with, again, fortunate to get a job with Goldman Sachs. And that's where I spent a good number of years, had an amazing time. I was there through the GFC. And then I started getting this itch to do to do software again. And that's where Ambit came from. Myself and let's call them a brains trust of people around me came up with this idea of conversational artificial intelligence, an ability to talk to people for computers. So everything we do, clicking, typing, dragging, pointing, etc., it's all about the computer. And so I asked that question, what if we make that about the person? What are the ways that people like to interact? Now, people do like to send messages and they do like to talk. So with conversational AI, maybe we can make the computer do the work and the humans can just be themselves. And that's really where Ambit came from.
Wow. I am checking some of your other interviews, and yet I'd love to have a round two with you, because today we will have like very few times see that like you're multifaceted. But let me start with this. Did you get your supercar?
Yeah.
What
Did
was
I?
it?
No, I've had some good cars, but I've never quite got the supercar. I think over time, my needs changed. And I think when I was mid-20s, I measured things based on how many super things I had. Supercar, supermodel, super yacht, right? And then over time, and then I had something else even more super, a super family. So I have a couple of kids, and my priorities changed then. And now I look for more purpose-driven things rather than measuring things on a unilateral way of just around money and those kind of things. And well, I think that's important, and I still strive for it, and I get paid for occasional things that I do. I don't see that as the single measure of myself or anyone's worth.
Right. What is your measure of self-worth nowadays, if there's such a thing?
Yeah, so there's a purpose thing there. And if you know, and I'm sure you do, the Japanese concept of ikigai, as soon as I saw this, I realized this is the answer. And it ties into this book, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And he was a guy that survived concentration camps through World War II. And he talked about people's ability to survive and be in a good mental place was about their ability to have purpose. And he was a medical doctor, and he worked out that other people with a similar calling, where they were driven by purpose, they were the ones that survived. And so I guess the it went fairly quiet over some time, but then this ikigai concept started being talked about more a number of years ago, where you need to do something in your life where you do something that you're good at, right? It's part of the Venn diagram. You can throw a diagram up after this. Then you need to do something where people will pay you. So if you're good at it and they'll pay you, that's like a profession. And then if you can do something that that you enjoy, then that's becoming really good, right? And then finally, if you can do something that the world needs or purpose, then you can be happy in what you do. And I can't remember who said it, but you'll never work a day in your life if you do that. And it's the intersection of these four areas. And you can make it much more complex than that, but I didn't. So what I started tracking this about 15 years ago, and I started drawing these intersecting circles. And I realized the thing that sat in the middle for me was teaching people, probably in a public setting, so public speaking around leadership. And so I have very slowly, in that kind of decade-long way of planning, been positioning myself to be learning about leadership, to be able to teach people about leadership. And I believe that's something that the world needs. I like it. I get paid for it. And apparently I'm good enough at it that I get called back. So that's my purpose.
Love it. And how does Ambit fit into all of this? I can definitely see the current product market fit, but what about the ikigai lens of things?
Yeah, that's a more subtle question there. So originally it was designed as a way of letting people communicate with computers and vice versa in an easier way. And it works very well in the area of customer service. However, the area we originally worked out it would be good for would be counseling and coaching. And so the more we work with different players, the more we're heading to that direction. So we've created, for instance, a virtual vet nurse. I'm in the process of doing some research around how it could be a virtual admitting nurse or a nurse that does triage, etc. Do some of the triage that doctors will typically do. What happens if we can put that capability in people's hands in a live 24-hour capability on their phone, for instance, so they can have an ongoing discussion, verbal, typed, maybe it can read some other data, and it belongs to them, and that data belongs to them, but they can converse with it like a doctor, and it can continuously diagnose their health. And that's the way I like to see it, diagnosing health. If there's something aberrant, then you can start to look at saying, you know, what are the interventions we need to look at? Now, I'm not a medical professional, but I love this idea. What if we can put this in the hands of the third world? What if we can put it in the hands of Americans who can't afford healthcare? What if we can solve that gap? I really love that idea.
I think a chatbot is sort of like an axe, a two-sided axe or double-edged sword. If you put it in the hands of someone that doesn't know how to use a tool to get more educated, well, they hurt themselves? Probably not, but they probably will stop using the tool quite quick. What I mean by that is I think people need to start reading books before they can read chatbots to learn how to ask good questions. Or am I wrong in saying that? And can a chatbot actually teach you how to ask good questions?
I would say at the early outset of the use of chatbots, they were really for people that knew what they wanted and how to get it. As conversational AI develops, especially with generative artificial intelligence like ChatGPT, those kind of things, then they are becoming far, far more approachable. And I do see that they can actually teach people in the way that people need to learn. Now, I'm not saying that teaches people human interaction, and there's nothing I'd love more than meeting up with you face to face and going on a motorcycle trip and, you know, in the back of Mexico. That would be incredible. You couldn't recreate that in any kind of virtual world through a chatbot or VR or whatever. However, if there was something simple that needed to be achieved, like maybe I need to add coffee to my shopping list, a chatbot's a pretty good way to do it. And I literally do that today. And let's do a test. Hey, Google, add coffee to my shopping list.
We
Right.
haven't
So
heard
my,
Google, but I guess I get it. I guess it did. And
oh, you couldn't hear it. Sorry about that. So um, that my whole house is set up so I can converse with it, and I can say what's the temperature in this room, or make sure it's warm when I get home. And those are the essences of conversation. I think a chat bot, unfortunately, I'd like to find the person that originally coined the term chat bot, and I'd like to have, definitely I've got beef with them. I'd like to have a fairly robust discussion with them. Terrible name, great potential.
How far are we away from having an AI assistant that you just vocally prompt and it does everything for you? And is the voice command the right type of command for that type of bot?
So we have all of the components that we need today. I would say that the way it works, errors multiply, right? So if you've got a chain of agents, we'll call them agents, and each one of them is 90% accurate. If you have 10 of them in a row, that quality is going to steadily degrade, 90% and then 81%, and then that's going to go down and down and down. So we have some issues to do with accuracy, but all of the components are there today. So if you have something simple, and I'm sorry you couldn't hear it, I can send you the audio after this, but I can easily add something to my shopping list. But if I said, find a recipe for this and add all of them to my shopping list, it might get a couple of things wrong, but probably enough so that I could fix it. So I don't believe we have a capability issue. I think we have an accuracy issue. Now, humans are very good at understanding mistakes that humans make. So if you mispronounced a word, or if I mispronounced a word, we can correct it in our brain. Very good at that. We're not as good at correcting mistakes that machines make. Now, one of the issues is that AI is a bit like a teenager, right? So it could be wrong, but it will be absolutely certain that it's right. So it sounds very confident. And if you ask ChatGPT something it doesn't know, it just makes it up. It's just like my teenagers, right? And it's absolutely certain, and it will argue with you about it. And there's a really entertaining set of things around getting GPT to say the wrong thing. So that's where we have a little bit of a communication issue. Now, this can be fixed with reinforcement learning, where when we get mistakes back from the machine, from AI, the humans who are trained in this can put feedback back to the machine to say this was wrong for this reason, and then it can improve. You only need 1 or 2 generations of this. And this is not a human generation of 20, 25 years. This is a computer generation of 3 or 4 months. And as you correct that with reinforcement learning, it will rapidly improve. And I would say this time a year from now, it'll be sensational.
Right. Okay. So I had the founder of an AI stock trading company. I had 2 of them in the last 4 weeks, and one was just before you. So say that you deploy an AI, and he's confident that this will actually happen. And your AI is so good that it breaks the market, right? Stock market is win-lose. And I mean, you've been there, done that. Should we put a limit to our greed? Like as soon because I'm saying that because an assistant that would execute on my behalf from a business standpoint would be very similar, right? And how could I tell it to stop once I tell her to stop, or it? I'm not sure why I'm saying her, by the way, maybe because I imagine that all assistants are female, or historically they have been. Whatever, folks will hate me on that, but do I tell it to stop once I reach 80 million? Should there be a cap? Then what about the company that provides it to me? Will they make bank while I make bank? Will they make bank before me and just not offer this AI to all if that happens?
I think, yeah, I've been in this area for a long time, right? And so with the advent of high frequency trading, and high frequency is not what most people think. High frequency is literally millions and millions of trades. These are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of trades a second for potentially fractions of a cent. So when you combine that with the ability to use AI and make actual decisions, then at first you have a temporal offset, I would describe it as. So that temporal offset means the first person who gets there with something that is an order of magnitude better will have a very substantial win. And I would say it will cause, market disruption, probably market closures, that kind of thing. However, what it does is it does invite everyone else to get into that space. And so, I mean, you need the kill switch somewhere. And I don't think that capitalists are going to build a kill switch in their own money-making machine. I think you need regulation that will sit in between and notice distortions and just put in little micro pauses. They could even be random. Random pauses can do wonderful things. For instance, they can stop algorithms that need constant access. So, and this is not what was intended with markets, right? So they're not meant to be an all-out war of machine guns. They're meant to really be a long-term weighing machine, not even a voting machine. So when you combine that, it will encourage the use of others to get into AI. Now, AI trading, what you'll find, inevitably, all market players will need a capability. Now, what will that do? It will neutralize the playing field again. But in that sense of kind of like a nuclear reactor, we've gone from having pistols on each side to rifles to cannons to nuclear weapons. And if regulators in financial areas are not looking at how to deal with this, then they're the wrong people, I would say. I actually suspect, I just said before, capitalists wouldn't self-limit their own machines. I don't think they'll self-limit their own machines because they know that their opponent won't be. But what they are uniquely looking to do is to bring in good, sensible, fair regulation that enables the continuity of the market. Well, if the market breaks down, there's no money for anyone. Well, maybe the very long-term players. But personally, I don't really welcome a market that operates like that. I was at, in Goldman's and watching people make individual trades and be a big trade, it'd be $10 million of this or something. And then you look to see, if you read Michael Lewis's book about high frequency trading, pretty incredible, how far ahead the machine-driven ones are. And these are what I would describe as relatively simple algorithms. Hedge funds put themselves in an unassailable position to be able to take advantage of market dislocation, especially with timing. Now, that kind of neutralizes itself out, and now you're in a different position. I think ultimately, all of that trading stuff is nonsense anyway. I want to know what is driving underlying value. I think there is a mild offset through looking at sustainable business practices, and I think that's been available since kind of 2005 when ESG investment kicked off. And I think most people are heading in that direction, but we've still got a few dirty industries. We've still got oil and gas being, one of the really obvious ones. You can't ignore it because it still powers a lot of industry, but you are getting companies that are choosing to move in different directions. Now, of course, those companies have to disrupt themselves. They are not looking to make a buck from win-lose market. They are looking to deliver value. Now, if we focus on delivering value to society, to shareholders, whatever it might be, then yes, you kind of have to win the trading game. But I welcome this move back to something where, is it democratization of AI or is it the limitation of automation of trading? I don't know. It'll be a very interesting kind of counterpoint over time.
Yeah, and okay, well, first the market itself, right? Like if someone crack it, I do believe someone will crack it. I think people will even branch out of some currencies. just like they fork in the crypto world. They'll just unvalidate all USD and everyone will shift to a currency that is anti-AGI, something like that. It's interesting to think about that. Then we probably don't need the full stock trading options to actually go in a somewhat quote unquote dystopia. Just imagine a Charles AI running this podcast, right? The AI would interview you for hours. It would know everything about you. It would make you cry. It would make you laugh, craft, which is a mix of cry and laugh. It would tell you to, okay, we're not done yet. Go pick up some coffee, and it would hook you up for like 15 hours, be the greatest interview ever. And it would do that at scale. The thing in this market most of the time is that our time is limited. If I take your time from that, means that other podcasters wouldn't get it. It would just be simply the best interviewer. It would have the most views, and in any market it would be like that, which is just interesting to think about all of this. And like you said, I think the data is there. Maybe the GPU capacity is not. Maybe the funding for these GPUs is not there yet, but I think that can be a potential future. Somewhat closing us off to that, because I know you have more to say, and so do I. So let's book a round two. But until then, where can people find out more about you, Tim?
Best way to find me is on LinkedIn. So you can look up Tim Warren. I'm TS Warren is my handle on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find me. I'm pretty much always there. And yeah, I'd love it if people reached out. Thanks very much for your time.
My pleasure. So this was Charles, CEO Wisdom Podcast.com, and that was Tim Warren. You can find him under Tim Warren on LinkedIn.